Welcome back, everyone. We're now in the final session of day one of the Hack Summit. And I'm very, very pleased to have here Hampton Catlin, who created Sass and Haml, the markup languages, and also designed the Wikipedia mobile app, mobile.wikipedia.com, which was later purchased by the Wikimedia Foundation. And Hampton's also a book author of The Pragmatic Guide to Sass, and he has a new edition coming out soon as well. He's also courses, online education on various websites. And Hampton, I just wanted before I fully introduce you, I want to make sure that the audience fully appreciates the journey that it took for you to be here. Just to let the audience know, Hampton is in Japan right now. So this is a pure event. He's coming in from Japan, and he canceled his trip to Disneyland in Japan to be here with us today because he wants to be here with us to kind of impart his wisdom. So we're just really grateful for that and for the extraordinary length you've done to make it work here. The internet was crazy for him. He finally found a co-working space. And so there might be a little bit of noise in the background, but we're just privileged to have any of his time today. So Hampton, thanks for being here.
Yeah, no problem. And by the way, I am going to Disneyland this afternoon. So it's the morning here. So I didn't fully give it up.
You took part of the trip away from Disneyland.
Yeah, the whole day part, yeah. Yeah, it's surprisingly hard to find Wi-Fi in Tokyo. Everything here seems to have a 300 megabyte limit. That's what I discovered. Everything you can possibly do, it's 300 megabyte limit, which isn't so good for video calls. All right, well, let me.
So before you give your presentation, I'd like to quickly introduce you a little bit and talk a little bit more about what you've created here. And there's a little bit of an audio delay here between when I speak and when you hear me, so there might be some overlap. So we might have to be a little bit patient here. But can you just briefly explain to our audience what is Sass and Haml and what you created there? And that might help give some context to your talk, which you'll then launch into right after that.
Yeah, actually, I don't really talk about them in my talk at all. Yeah, I mean, Sass is it was the world's first CSS preprocessor, which basically means if you're writing CSS, it kind of gives you superpowers. And yeah, before Sass, there wasn't anything like that. And it came about because I was working with some really talented CSS developers, and when they were having to hand code everything, like I could see how horrible it was. They were repeating stuff everywhere and find and replace and stuff, and I was like, this is not happening. So I wrote up a spec and convinced Natalie Weizenbaum to actually implement the language, and then she went off and implemented it. Yeah, so that's that. And then Haml was a earlier technology that's kind of a structural representation of HTML. And I guess if I want to brag properly, which I'm good at, it was kind of if you've ever used Jade or any like indented structured HTML thing, so those are all pretty much, Haml was the first one of those. So yay, I have weird ideas apparently. Yeah, and yeah, and then, so it's funny, this talk is actually, most people know me from those technologies. Most of my career has been like tech management and product building. It's funny, I'm not, it's been a while since I've been a full-time programmer. And I feel like it's always funny, people seem to never notice that about me, which I think is kind of funny. It's like, oh, you must be a front-end developer. I'm like, no, I mostly manage people now, which I super enjoy. And yeah, I mean, this talk is kind of cool to me because actually, can I do one of these polls? I think we set one up. Oop, I can't hear you. That's fun. Nope. I wonder if that's me or you. Well, as long as you can hear me. Okay. I'm just going to give you the presentation. Just so, part of this is I'm going to guess almost everybody in this room, if you work full-time as a developer. Oh yeah, sorry, there's the poll. Yeah, 64% of you have had to interview somebody. And that totally makes sense. Let me put sorry, let me get my presentation up. Oop. Okay, Yeah, we've all had an interview, and interviewing is a super important part of what we all have to do every day, because the team that we build is the team that we have to work with. And yeah, I was just going to point out that I am in Shibuya right now, which it's that big intersection with all those people that cross all at once. This actually isn't the most crowded version of that picture possible. And then, yeah, when I tried to use the internet at a couple of places, they have this sign to let you know that you need a certificate of alien registration if you want to use the internet, which made everything a bit more challenging. So this is where I'm currently sitting. I do have to take my shoes off. It kind of goes underground. Yeah, so we all spend. So I'm just gonna make sure. Sorry that everyone can hear me. Somebody say in the chat room if you can hear me, just so I know that I'm not totally. Okay, well, you heard that, so there you go. Yeah, don't take Jack. Good. Sorry. All right, so back to it. Yeah, so we spend 7.7 hours sleeping every week. Every day. Some weeks it's that low. 8.9 hours working and 7.4 hours doing everything else, which roughly breaks down to something like this. And basically you end up spending more time with your coworkers than your spouse. Like your job is the dominant thing in your life. That's kind of sad to admit, but it's totally true. This is a phrase I say a whole lot. Technology is people. There's it'll come up sometimes that somebody will be like, wait, are you a technology person or a people person? I mean, that's the weirdest question ever, because yeah, technology is people. It's human. So let me mention what we don't have in technology, right? So in the tech career, there's no horses. We don't have steam engines. You don't have to own a truck. There's no iron ingots, no raw fish, no crude oil, no warehouses. You don't have to stitch at all. There's no, raw materials. We have basically people and like a laptop or something. That's it. That is the entirety of what we do. And all these other things are blank. Because so obviously, your laptop's important, but people, that's the most important part. So I would say we deal in ideas. It's our brain plus our machines. So who and how we hire is literally everything for your company. And I mean, I'll definitely mention, some of you knows the job market's pretty nuts right now. And what I mean by that is, if you're an outgoing white guy with a great resume like me, totally fantastic. Here are some quotes that I've literally heard while hiring people or hearing of hiring decisions in my career. I know you've been doing they've been doing infrastructure for 25 years, but I don't think they really get the cloud. This person was a little bit older than the average employee, and basically people were discussing that it really didn't matter any of the experience. Like a kid who downloaded Docker was more qualified. Oh, her blouse was all done up really high, like a Victorian. I bet she'd be a real downer to work with. That's a dark one. I like this one. I'm not sure they're a culture fit, which is basically, I say culture fit one more time. What do you mean by culture fit? Does it mean they don't play the same video games as you? Does it mean they're from a different culture? Does it mean they don't share our values and philosophy as a company? That makes more sense? But this talk isn't some sort of diversity talk, but this talk is totally about diversity, because, well, first of all, let's go talk about, I'm going to call it interview science. There's a link here at the bottom for MNSU. If you just look up the employment overview, it's basically they did a survey of surveys and wrote a paper about it. And there are three things that all good interviews have. Like, they just show this across the board. Structured. Any structure to an interview is good. Now, I'm going to take issue with the way we structure stuff in technology, but having a structure is much better than unstructured, both by interviewee and interviewer standards. Behavioral. So these are asking questions where we want to know about the person's past and their current behaviors. And mostly these are tested just by talking. Like, there's no magic behavioral method. It's like you say, hey, well, in your last role, what did you think? How did you handle this? It's very straightforward. And then situational, which is basically where we're asking about what they would do in various situations that would show up during the job. This is one that I think we don't do a lot in technology. For all the interviews I've ever had or sat in on, very rarely are we asking these types of questions like, what would you do if a coworker got angry at you? What would you do if you found a security hole? That kind of thing. Or like, what if, we changed the project schedule? These are super informational questions to ask. And I'll mention that, actually, I don't have a link for this, but there have been a lot of studies that if you ask somebody what would they do, they tend to answer more honestly than you would think, even in interview situations, which is interesting. It's not 100%, but I guess we'd assume everybody would lie and be perfect at it. But usually, if somebody would react a certain way, they're happy with that reaction. So if somebody goes, "I'd be angry," oftentimes that's how they feel about things. So a lot of times the way we phrase hiring is, we need a programmer. Let's get one. And we're analytical people generally in technology. That's just how we are. So you think of it, we have a problem, then that goes into the product management guy with a clipboard, and then it goes out to our developers who output code. And let's be honest, that's the way we really think of how this works. It's not so diverse. But basically the idea is that it's, we're humans and we output code. Human input, code output. Like a giant Sudoku puzzle. We're given a puzzle and our job is to output a solution. There's a Rihanna video. We're just, this is what tech management's like. Keep typing. And since we're analytical people, we can rationalize hiring. If being a programmer is about programming skill, then we can test that. We can test coding, right? So test-driven hiring is what I call it. So I have a little aside story. I spent the last 2 years on a small startup that we didn't think would make any money, and it didn't. So we started looking around for kind of what the next gig would be. And I came on this site. I tried to block it out, so I'm not totally crapping on this company. But I saw it's like an exclusive network for top freelance software developers. A lot of their stuff said people who can do Rails. And, I'm like, top talent. I don't, top 3%. Well, sure, whatever. I mean, they're looking, I've done this. Like, I've launched at least 10 production sites, which, by the way, trying to figure out how many sites you've built is not an easy thing to try to figure out. But I built and managed m.wikipedia.org. It was in MERB, which is like Rails. It had 2 billion requests a month, and I did that. Like, come on, I'm pretty good. I created Sass and Haml. I created a lot of the early features in Rails. I've been doing Rails professionally for 10 and a half years. I did check the date. Holy crap, I am old. I even wrote I kind of co-authored a book on Rails. So, I could do this job. And they say, just take this quick, easy test. They didn't really care about my resume. It was one of those online tests. And so I went and took a little code editor, and it was timed. And I got 0%. 0. Like, I know everybody would imagine that if your career is going really well and you've done lots of cool stuff, that, you're going to survive seeing that 0 better and go, oh, screw those people. But it was like a gut punch. I was like, so upset because it wasn't a 1%. Like I got rejected, and for 0. Like, what am I doing wrong in my life? Like, I thought it was pretty good. What's happening? And I will mention that of the 3 tests, one of the 3 tests they gave included a variation of the Knight's Tour, which is it's funny. There's brute force, like neural networks is considered a pretty decent way to calculate this stuff out. So I felt like that was a little bit intense, especially they want people to build web software. So I don't really know why I need to know about that. I mean, this is not only about my fragile ego, but this is a terrible test for what they need. And it begs the question, like, well, what are we testing for? What are we trying to figure out? What is the job that we're even looking for? And I would say top 3%. I would say 3% of the people I've worked with could solve those types of problems. But that doesn't mean best 3%. That's not the most valuable 3%. Some of those people were horrible to work with and couldn't deliver a project if it wasn't clever enough. And then we have to say, like, what is productive anyway, right? Is it how much code you write? Is it how clever the code is? Is it mentorship? Like these things are complicated with teams. Like it's not a simple thing, and it makes me wonder, like, is a manager hiring, do I want a room full of people who can solve the same complex problem? Is that what's going to make my team great? That they're all just like, ooh, well, let's do another Knight's problem, Knight's Tour. And I like this general Pat quote: if everyone's thinking alike, then somebody is not thinking. Sorry, I got a message. I was making sure I hadn't lost connection. Yeah, okay. Here's another thing. So, right, we want that diversity of thought. We want somebody thinking differently, right? That is so important. And here's another quote that I've heard a ton. We have to make sure that new hires are even better than the last round. Or we're looking for rock stars. By the way, I mean that when I hear that internally. I know a lot of people point out job listings that say that. I'm saying how many times I've heard this internally. And I don't know if I really want a rock star, to be honest. And this is the quote: we've got to keep raising the bar. Oh, bar raisers. It's like the worst thing to me. This is from Trek, who's on the Ember core team and a super experienced developer. And he tweeted this: I've been Twitter following the careers of people we interviewed but passed on. Turns out we were almost always wrong. We had a group called Bar Raisers who mainly torpedoed candidates that lacked CS fundamentals. We passed on so many good people. To which a bunch of people replied, same here, I'm doing the same thing. And there's greatest misses. So whenever anybody says Bar Raisers, say raise the bar one more time. Because it's just such a weird, to rank, it comes down to a core question of the idea that somebody is good and somebody is bad is problematic in a team setting. To what bar are we raising? Are we raising, mentorship? Are we raising code quality? What algorithm skill? Like what are we raising? Okay, so enough making fun of how we do things now. What am I proposing? And I'm back to diversity. Teams maybe need someone who can solve the Knight's Tour. Teams need a lot more than that. Even a bad programmer, quote unquote, can be super valuable. The only bad developers I've ever worked with are those who have no interest in helping the team. Those are bad developers. And they might actually, a lot of them probably could solve those questions that they gave me, but they were bad. I mean, they were bad for the team. It wasn't good. It slowed down our overall development time. Because I find it way easier to teach code than to teach empathy. If somebody comes in and they think of themselves as a lone island, it's really hard to get them to give crap about anybody else. But I can take somebody who doesn't really, who is not maybe a coding superstar, and we can teach code. We can mentor that. And like a bad coder works hard, helps people, and is open to being mentored. Think of those three things: works hard, helps people, and is open to being mentored. That's not a bad coder. You're not going to be a bad coder. Like, no way. It's impossible. Okay, this is a quote by Zig Ziglar, who's kind of a douchebag, and it's kind of a douchey quote, but it kind of applies to this, that it's your attitude, not your aptitude, that determines your altitude. But like, it's your attitude that will determine your success. Like, I know this is some sales something, but you know, I still think it totally makes sense. Like, how good you are when you walk in, how clever you are is not the thing that will make our team better. A mixed team is the best. All right, so let's talk about how I propose that we hire. Well, first of all, I think the Romans actually had the right answer to this problem. Auspices. So if you just watch the birds in the sky, it's very, very effective. I had to throw in a Roman history joke. Sorry. No, but seriously, it's horoscopes. That's the only effective way to hire. All right. Okay, sorry, my joke's really dumb. Let's frame hiring in a different way. I call this positive versus negative hiring practices. And the question, the way this works is negative is, and this is how pretty much every company does it. This is how I've done it in the past. Like, how might this person fail? What is wrong with this person? Let's give them 3 tests, and if they fail one really bad, or like we're basically looking for problems. Then there's positive. How might this person kick butt? That's a very different way to deal with stuff. And it comes out, there's another way to phrase it. Are you afraid of hiring bad people? Or are you afraid of not hiring good people? So being afraid of hiring bad people is how most companies are, when people say bar raisers, they're worried that somebody will sneak in who's terrible, and then it'll bring down the company because now we have bad people and the new people we're hiring are terrible. I'm sure that's happened. I don't think it happened because management was strong. I think other stuff was probably going wrong with that company. I think I'm now, after years of experience of doing hiring, the thing I'm now afraid of is missing great people. It's really hard to hire, and it's really hard to find a good match. And yeah, like I said, I used to do the negative thing, and I used to have what I call the veto rule. I'm admitting my past sins. And basically, if anybody on the team was saying that they didn't think they were totally awesome, we would just say no. So just one person being like, and that's a no. Yeah, kind of harsh. I think I've definitely become converted. Well, and by the way, I learned that because that's the way I was taught. I've now switched to the believer role. So if anyone on the team is really convinced that someone would be awesome, we should hire them. And usually if somebody is the believer, they're the one who will mentor them. Like, that's what's needed. Teach them how to use the system, teach them how to do the job. So talk about good interview techniques. Actually, I'm gonna do a quick aside, if that's okay. It is okay, and I can't hear anybody, so you have to deal with it. Actually, we're ahead of schedule. So, quick aside, imagine if the way we hire in technology is how they hired in other jobs. So imagine you were going for a marketing job, and you sat down to the interview, and they said, hey, this is a casual session. Can you write out a newsletter for me? Yeah, no, we're launching make it like it's a new Wi-Fi product. No, why did you do that? Yeah, I would really put those features at the top. Or imagine if you're a lawyer and you're in an interview and they're like, you're a lawyer and they're like, would you mind giving closing arguments, please? Just do it off the cuff. It's fine. No pressure. This is a fun environment. It would be so weird. And they don't do that. They just talk about, what kind of cases have you handled? They talk about it. It's very few jobs where I think being a cook, like a chef, that's the only job I can think of where your interview would be kind of doing the job. Yeah, but for some reason, technology, we think it's the same thing of, just code something for me. All right, so let's get to good interview techniques. So this is what I propose. let them design the process. This takes a little more time, and you can learn a lot about the person, but let the interviewee say, okay, what do you want to do to show how awesome you are? Whatever it is. Is it just your resume? Is it, do you have a side project? Do you want to, do a project with one of our employees? You want to come work for a day? We'll pay you. Like, do you want to come pair program? Whatever they want. Or do you just want to let, your resume stand? Sorry, maybe I started that one, but maybe you think it's strong enough. Give the interview a chance to show off is the goal. And this is based off positive, right? So we're looking for, you show me why you're awesome. Like, help them show their best self. And then you talk about how they might kick ass. Like, that should be the conversation. That situational thing, right? That's one of the two things that you should be looking at. You need to be asking, what would you do? How would you be awesome here? What kind of problems do you want to help out on? Those are totally the things that are super important. I think we've confused that situational means the code. Here's a little Sudoku puzzle, do it. And that's not the way that team works. That's not the way that code works. And I basically think all sit and code and whiteboard sessions, especially if they're required, are not good. I don't think, I go back to that. Can you imagine any other professional job where we thought that was a good metric? So I think back to the lawyer thing, right? Some lawyers give great closing arguments. That's 1% of the job. That is 1% of the job of being a lawyer. A lot of it's having a meeting, doing legal research, reviewing paperwork, writing briefs. Like, it is not giving a closing argument. That is not the job. So I think it's just really odd that instead of dealing with people as people, we deal with them as the machines who output code. And hey, by the way, some people on the team, I want to hire some people who that would be their preference. They're like, give me a problem, I'll solve it. And you need those people. I've worked with them. Natalie Weisenbaum, who implemented Sass and has continued to design the language, she is definitely the kind of person who likes algorithms. She would nail one of those. She would have probably invented a new, like, the Knights Tour thing. She probably would have just totally changed, come up with a whole new solution. They had to edit Wikipedia because her solution was so good. But that's not everybody on your team, and it shouldn't be. It's the wrong mix. It's good when there's people of different backgrounds and the way they think, and coding's not that hard. The main way that I figure out, for me, their technology aptitude is just talking about it. I don't think this is a magical thing for me or something. I think it is really easy if you try to talk about technology with somebody to figure out what their level is. Like, you ask about a recent problem they've been working on, or you ask what they've been learning. You ask their opinions about different technologies. What do you think about Node? And I don't know if there's a person alive these days who doesn't have one way or another opinion on that. Or sorry, if somebody gives a passionate answer about some part of the technology stack, they're gonna nail it. Like, it's a passion that needs to be there, and a willingness to learn about it and ability to discuss it. That is so much easier for me to detect, because I can't tell. Like, if you can do was it FizzBuzz? Is that everybody gives a stupid thing? If you do FizzBuzz, that does not indicate to me that you can code. It means you looked it up. Or maybe you're just good at that kind of puzzle. It's so different than really, understanding. Most of my job, I feel like, is understanding how to model things in Mongo or the database, like how to figure out what's the right technology to use, or how to implement caching correctly. Like, it is so different than that Sudoku puzzle. It really just, you want to understand technology end to end. Those are the people I'm looking for. There's only one kind of negative filter that I use. That is a thing where you kind of won't get a job if I see this. And I don't hire those who are openly hostile to teamwork or mentorship. The note down there is you would be shocked how well that works. For real, people will admit that really quickly. You'd think nobody would ever say that. Who would say, I don't like teamwork? But there are definitely people who'd be like, I'm more of a solo person. And hey, if you're a solo person, that's fantastic, but I need a team member. And I need somebody who's willing to learn and teach. That's what I need. And hey, be an online consultant or go work at Google in the algorithm team. I'm sure plenty of places you can go work. I don't need those people on my team because I don't think they're usually not worth their talent. Maybe they're brilliant, but if they think the idea of teamwork is terrible, yeah, no, you can't build a team like that. Especially if they're senior, because then they're going to be mentoring other people into that attitude. And that's a note that mentorship isn't just those who are experienced. At least this is my philosophy. It's something that starts from the most junior developer all the way up. Everybody should be helping everybody else out. And it's funny, if you take this attitude, finding managers is really easy. I found that some jobs do this thing where it's like, okay, now you're a manager, your job isn't coding anymore. And just it's like this big deal, like, ooh, you just changed. Basically, managers just turn into managers when they end up mentoring more than they're coding, or they realize that they're not coding at all and they're just mentoring and helping and organizing. That's all of a sudden you have your whole pipeline set up, and that attitude can really make a team feel awesome. And look, let's say we do hire somebody bad, right? As I've said, it's happened to me before. You fire them. It's not fun, but it's part of being a boss. And luckily I haven't had to do it too much. But if their attitude is bad and stays bad and they have no willingness to change that, and they're not willing to be mentored, and there's a solution. There's not a solution for we didn't hire somebody. Like that ship has sailed. There is a solution. It's not one that is great or that there's any pleasure in, but there is an option. And I call it like use the positive force, because I feel that there's so many people, especially older people, minorities, people without traditional educations, who never get to show their talents. I mean, I'll be honest, this was me for a long time. Before I started using the veto system myself, I could not get a job for about 5 years in tech after the crash, and I didn't have a college degree, so I couldn't even get an interview. I couldn't even show, and I think I'm all right, even though that other website thinks I'm 0%. But yeah, I mean, so many people never get to show their talents, and it is so important to find those people. And like, you don't want clones of yourself. Just because you can do a problem and just because you have a certain idea doesn't mean that's good. Like, you need a mixed group of people who are not like you, specifically not like you. And if you are interviewing, if a place's process makes you uncomfortable, or it doesn't it is the number one thing I think that you can figure out about a company. Like, as an interviewee, I learned so much about when I asked them about the process and why they do it that way. I have been job searching recently, even though I'm in Tokyo, which makes it kind of hard. So it's been a long time since I've been in the interview position, which I have been recently. And 2 or 3 times I've just turned down after they described the interview process, because I'm like, nope, like, we're not going to get along. Like, this is not going to be, because also the thing is, maybe you like the company, but you don't like the interview process. But everybody who works there is going to be somebody who likes the interview process enough to take the job. And this is why I will never work at Google, because no thanks. All right, we're now at the end of my slides at H. Catlin. Let's see if we can fix this audio thing. Let's see if I can come back to. Oh, there you go. Now you can see me. Ed, you there? Do, do, do. All right, well, I'm going to go to, yeah, I know it is awkward. I agree, whoever just said that. Okay, let's go to the top questions. Okay, Alexi says, how do I sell yourself as a software developer? Yeah. So remember how I said that the hardest part of software development is that, actually, kind of hiring, is that you can't do these live tests, or I don't think they're good. I don't think they're possible, because the job's about figuring out the problem, talking to people, considering it over time, thinking about the software architecture, thinking about scaling, thinking about maintenance, thinking about documentation. Like, you know, that's what makes a great developer, is all those things. Really show, and this is why everybody says this all the time. It is by doing open source patches and your own projects. And I know how hard, like, that's an easy answer, and I know how hard it is the first time to get into that. Like, that first commit is really, really, really hard. So like you know, you're figuring out how the heck they structured everything. You're trying to figure out what actually the problem is. But it is worth it. And, you know, I can only encourage, if I see somebody's GitHub page and I can go see a clean patch and pull request that they made to a project, I mean, you're hired. Like, that to me is the same as showing what the real job is, because the real job in a company is writing a good pull request, documenting it properly. Like, it's a lot of, it's not as glamorous as a really clever algorithm. So I want to see that somebody can go do that grunt work effectively.
Hampton, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you now.
Okay, great. Just was having some audio issues before. Keep going.
All right, so let's go the next. Alexi's got good questions. Oh, what are the red flags to pay attention to when interviewing? I mean, I would definitely say, as I said, I think, so as an employee looking at a company, one of the things I ask are, what are your company values? And then if they hesitate and don't have a good answer, that's a red flag for me. And then I usually ask, like, you know, 1 to 10, how good are you in management at sticking to those values? And how honest people are with these answers. Like if you don't ask them, people will lie, but you should ask each single person you talk to. I also ask sometimes, like, what's the biggest problem this company has, or why would this, if you look back 10 years from now, why would this company fail? That's one I usually ask. But yeah, and then from the HR manager perspective, yeah, like I said, teamwork. I don't know. I mean, that's asking about how they feel about mentoring and teamwork, and that one's so easy. And again, the people who don't like teamwork are proud of it. In the 17,000, wow, people out there are like, I don't like teams, please leave me alone. And that's great, you do you. Not on my team. Okay, tips on knowing if a candidate will fit your dev team. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the right answer. Ooh, here's a, let's see, how can an entry-level program get hired? The open source code, again, is the #1 way, and I know it's hard. Go check it, like the Sass project has a contributing file. Most open source projects have a file called contributing, or it's sometimes in the wiki. Tweet at me if there's any of the projects that I've worked on that you want to help out with, because usually most good projects now have flags on issues that a new person can help with, and sometimes the first thing to do is just fix a typo to get something in there. You know, you don't want to go into a project and rewrite all the code. They're not going to accept that. But if you do that as an entry-level programmer, you will get hired. It is scary, it is frustrating, and it will take probably multiple days to get your first patch done. And that's a luxury. I understand a lot of people have kids and things going on, and they don't have that much time. But if you can pull it off, that's the surefire way. Otherwise, go meet people. Sorry, it has been amazing to me how many times so since I do Treehouse teaching, a lot of, and Sass is very much a first technology a lot of people learn, first kind of intro to coding. I get that question a ton, just like, hey, how do I find a job? Like, how do I do this? And it's amazing. People don't realize that in your local community, there's meetups. Go to those. Like, I know I seem like an outgoing and charming guy, but I'm super shy. I really am. I find going to meetups and stuff very stressful. Interacting with humans, and most of us in computers are like that. But like, your town probably has some tech meetup. Just go. You maybe won't understand it. Introduce yourself to like 3 people, and then go back again and say hi to them again. By meeting people like that, you will find a job. Like, that is how you'll find a job. That's a great way. Actually, it's funny. My ex-business partner and a guy who visited me here in Tokyo, we were all hanging out with his wife and him. I met him at actually, I hired him because I was at a meetup. He came to me and he was like, "Oh, I'm just learning. I'm having a real problem." This was like 10 years ago, or maybe 9 years ago. And he's like, "I'm having a problem live updating data on a web page. I need like live updates and all this stuff happening. How do you fix that?" And this is before we had Pusher and stuff. Now it's a lot more simple. But I was like, so you're dealing with the problems that all of us are dealing with, and you have a lot of really good insights. And I was like, this person needs to get hired. It was based off something he wasn't confident about asking. He was trying to get advice. So go do that. Wherever. I'm trying to think like what town might not have one. Maybe if you're in Idaho, or I don't know.
I just want to add to that, Hampton. I completely agree with everything you just said there, especially with networking and going to meetups being useful for getting jobs. I think it's the personal connection that really helps, because otherwise you're just one of many resumes in a giant virtual stack, and you're not going to get noticed. And a lot of developers will put enormous effort into crafting the perfect resume and the perfect LinkedIn profile, right, and the perfect GitHub profile. And I think there's a point, there is a point of diminishing returns there, where I think that developers are looking to get career help, but at the same time, doing it in the right path and using the right techniques is essential.
Yeah, I mean, okay. So when you go to a meetup, the first thing you don't want to do is just sort of clear hair when you meet somebody. The first step is not, do you have a job? It's, hey, awkward. How you doing? Yeah. This is my first meeting. It's just building that rapport. And I actually think, a couple of months, you can probably make some friends. All right. Okay, let me see what else.
So Hampton, if you turn down your speakers just a little bit, there might be a feedback loop happening. And while you do that, I'm going to jump over to the audience polls.
Oh, yeah.
So I did ask the audience a few questions during your presentation. So the first question was, have you ever had to interview somebody? That was actually already in there. So about 2/3 of the audience said yes, 1/3 no. So we do have a fair number of interviewers in the audience today. And then I asked this question. I thought it would be kind of interesting to find out, does your company have a culture where they promote looking for rock stars and bar raisers? And in fact, by the way, I've been at many companies who look for this. In fact, that was the culture.
Yeah.
At my first job, the whole culture of the company was only hire someone better than you and raise the bar, right? And that was kind of the culture. And so about 22% of the audience are currently in a company that has that as the culture. And what's interesting here is that this bar raising idea, it's fascinating to me, because isn't there a point where if you make your company so good through continuously raising the bar, you should not be qualified to work at your own company eventually, right? Because how do you keep raising the bar? There's eventually a limit, right? So do you think there's any merit to this technique? Do you think, because obviously there is a substantial number, 20% or so of our audience that's in this environment. Do you think that's just a different style and that there's merit to it, or do you think that it's just strictly inferior to some of the techniques you're advocating today?
I mean, the intent of bar raisers is just to say, we should have a great company and team. Like, that is their intent. And so the concept of somebody saying that, I don't think is as weird. Like, it seems very normal. So, but I think as a technique, the idea that, like, I don't think there's a real bar. And I think whatever bar you're saying is just a filter. You're just filtering out a bunch of people who are maybe of a different mindset, different technology background. Yeah, I don't know what bar, quality bar? Like, is this like a 1880s straightforward IQ system? Like, you can assign a number to each human being on your team, and that is their ranking. I mean, I think there are some industries where maybe you could do that. Like, you could do, if I worked at a fish factory and I was shucking fish, I could very reasonably tell who on that assembly line is working faster. This is not how software works. Like, not at all. And like I even said, like, people who are below the bar can sometimes be incredibly valuable team members. Like, imagine I've had people on my team who, their main talent was tracking down bugs and organizing our GitHub issues. And it made the people who weren't good at that so much better.
And I'll actually add to that, Hampton, because I have noticed that for organizations where bar raising is important and rock stars are important, I've noticed a culture that develops where there's too many cooks in the kitchen sometimes, where no one wants to do the dirty work, the grunt work, because everyone feels entitled to be the architect or the CTO or the VP of engineering, and everybody wants ownership of the whole project, and it leads to infighting sometimes.
Oh, definitely. And especially that they're all going with these negative filtering techniques. I've noticed that certain types of people will, because you're filtering out everybody else, you kind of get clones. So, if you're it's funny. I mean, there's a 3D scanning company I know, and luckily they fixed this. But at first, the only people they had were people who wrote 3D scanning algorithms. And none of the other software worked. They had it was really clever, but nobody could use it because it didn't have any systems to drive it or documentation about it. It was all PhDs. And it's funny, a whole room full of people who can do the same thing. Depends on what you're doing, but yeah, I think it's negative. I think it's bad to think of it that way. I think you need to say, what's my problem on the team? What are we lacking here now? And or what could we use more? Where are we failing? And who is the type of person who could fix that? That's a really cool thing. Man, we're so far behind on, I don't know, documentation or this certain type of problem, maybe our CSS is so messed up, or I don't know, whatever. Maybe our database is slow. And you're we should get somebody who's really enjoys that.
So let me just follow up with you on this here. So another thing that I sometimes think about here is, you have folks like Mark Zuckerberg saying that there's a 10 to 100 times productivity difference between an average and kind of a quote unquote great developer. Some people call them unicorn developers, these mythical beasts that produce quantities of code, or maybe don't write large numbers of lines of code, but write just high quality code in smaller quantities. But the key takeaway point is that there tends to be this dynamic in our industry where there's a huge difference. And so how do you think about that gap and the whole idea of software teams becoming bloated and parallelization becoming more and more challenging the more team members that you add to the project?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because while I got 0% on that test, most places I've worked, when I was a coder, I was considered that 100 times developer. So I guess I believe in them. It's just, I don't want a whole team. So one of the reasons why I think I'm a very fast product developer is my brain tends to skip around the problem and figure out a simpler solution. And that's a good skill. It's not really producing 100 times more code or whatever. It's just being able to like launch something way faster. Yeah, so I mean it exists, but yeah, like I also am really terrible at writing huge test suites. Like I tend to test the tricky parts and then I skip the rest of it. I also am really bad at writing documentation. I am really bad at coming in and fixing bugs. That's not, it's not, I like to swoosh things out. That's why I can code fast, because I'm building it. But if there was a whole team of me, we would just be like making too much shit. Like, need to calm it down. So, I mean, this is like a combination of skills that can have hyper productive, sure, in certain contexts. I don't think that is a way to build a team that's good. I don't think it's realistic, and I mean, I was uncomfortable saying that because I'm like, I don't like that being said as some sort of norm or thinking that it's better necessarily. You know what I mean? Because it is such a, in order to be like that, there's a lot of trade-offs to what you're doing for a team. Like, yeah, a team full of me's would just be chaos. I would not build a team that, I mean, I like myself a lot, but it's not, it doesn't make diversity of thought. I really think that stuff, I've seen teams be very slow when they're all filled with rock stars, and thank God, I'm very proud to say, managed some teams with some crazy velocities. And I found that the more diverse the team was, including people who code slowly, we go faster as a group. Like, it's way more important. Okay, I'm going to use basically the whitest, most privileged analogy I possibly can. So, but it's the way I think of this. When you're a team, it is a team sport, and it is about doing things together and in order together. So I used to be a rower, like crew, one of those like long boats where every one oar for each person. And basically, the way they work is if everybody moves together, and you don't even have to put that much power into it, the boat will go really far. If you don't even have to be that strong, like we don't need, I mean, obviously if you're gonna be the fastest boat in the universe, but I can have a team of the strongest people, and if they're rowing at different orders, the boat just starts going side to side and it doesn't go fast. So to me, that's why I will take a boat full of people who are of various strength levels, and if we can all move at the same time and in the same direction, do it together, we're going to be super fast. Because I think, honestly, most development teams are like that set of rowers who are all just chopping at the water. So yeah, that's sorry.
No, that's a great answer. No, I exactly see your point there, actually. And this actually reminds me of the story of the 1980s Olympic team for hockey, where kind of a ragtag group was put together, but pulling together, maybe they weren't the most well-known athletes in the world. They actually were able to win in a very significant way, which was huge. And so there's a lot of analogies in other industries here too.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's a ton. I just wanted to pick the most privileged one I possibly could for my.
Great. So then last thing before we go, Hampton, I want to just cover this last quick poll, which was I asked the audience, does your company have interviewees sit and code or whiteboard? And it's about 50-50. So half of our audience has their interviewees sit and code and whiteboard or whiteboard, and half of them don't. So what would you say to the audience members who are currently having their interviewees sit and code and or whiteboard? Do you think that they might want to reconsider that? What's your perspective on that?
Yes. No, I think you should. I think, as I said, allowing people to design their own process is a really powerful way to think of it. And I certainly, like Natalie, who collaborate with on a ton of stuff, and she's amazing and totally not like me at all, would volunteer to do it. I mean, would say, give me an algorithm test. Like, that's what I'm good at. And I've also worked with a lot of people who that would be the last thing they would ever volunteer as a good way to show off their skills, including me. I'm terrible at those. Terrible. It's just not. It's funny. Yeah, algorithm questions are a Sudoku thing. That's, it is. There's maybe, you can work it at different angles, but there's kind of a right solution. Everybody says there isn't, but come on, there is. The idea is that you're kind of applying yourself to this one problem, and the constraints are set. Maybe that's what I need. So like the boundaries are being set by the person giving the question. You describe the mathematical problem, or the input and output. To me, that's like not what the job is. It's such a terrible thing. The job is figuring out what the problem is. Like, it's designing a puzzle. I mean, that's it's not solving it. Like, so look, there's probably 8 times in my career that a truly difficult algorithm problem has come up. And either there's somebody on the team who was so excited because they've been waiting for their chance to finally do this kind of problem, because that's what they thought the job was going to be when they first started. Or honestly, I go to Upwork and there's PhDs that you pay them like $600 and they'll build it for you. And it's usually pretty good. Yeah, so that's why I think sitting code can be good for some. Sometimes it's the best way to show off your skills. I don't think it is. I would say most people who have worked for me that I would certainly hire again or kind of really, really want on a team. That's probably 50-50 who are really good at those, and like who could survive one, and who I could see definitely failing one. So yeah, I don't think they're a good idea. You're going to miss a lot of great candidates.
Actually, I'll add to what you said there. So I think one benefit of your ideas here could be that if someone is, as a candidate, if they're actually volunteering to help facilitate their own interview process, you might actually cause the acceptance rate to go up of the offers that you extend as a company, because some of the top candidates, like yourself, for example, right, may be turned off by certain interview techniques, right? And so maybe by collaborating with the interviewee, it may even cause an adverse selection problem in your favor for that acceptance rate.
Yes. I mean, yeah, for me, it's not that interesting to other people. It has been funny how many companies I've run into where they're like, hey, we want to work with you so bad. It would be amazing to have you on the team. We use all your software. Could you just do this quick programming challenge though? To me, you know why it's funny. I turn those down, and it's not because I'm like, I'm so amazing, you should know it. And it's not just because I'm kind of bad at them. But it makes me think, like, if this is so, it makes me concerned about their viewpoint as a company. I'm like, that is kind of over processed. And I'm like, wait a second, you use my software on your system, right? Like, you're already using my code. Like, go to my GitHub page. I have like thousands of commits, and you can review them, and there's pull requests. And it just makes me, I've had a couple of companies be like, no, we have to give you this. We're not, like, it doesn't matter. And it's funny, it just makes me be like, oh, how, like, it seems like a crazy person thing to say, I guess. Which is why I'm like, design your own thing. You know what I would do? Sorry, if you want to interview me, and code was a thing, I would happily sit with somebody and go through commits I've made, and show you how I was thinking and what I did on a real project. That would be how I would design mine. Yeah, anyhow, there you go. Sorry.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Hampton. So really want to acknowledge you for being here today. Thanks for making the time to teach us all these interesting techniques about hiring. Really appreciate your advice.
Also, you should say thanks to my husband, who's having to sit here.
Oh, hello. Thanks for being here too. Thanks for being supportive. That's great.
He's just sitting there on his iPad.
Wonderful. So, so Hampton, are you available for a few minutes to take questions privately and hang out from our audience?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll paste the URL in there in just a second. I'm just going to close here with some closing comments, since now it's the end of the day for day 1 of the Hack Summit. So I think that today was great, by the way, and I'm really grateful for all the audience members who are still here with us. We learned a lot today. You know, we learned about hiring from Hampton. We learned about kind of independent contractors from Upwork, virtual work from Floyd Marinescu. We learned about open source voting from Brian Fox. Sarah Allen taught us a lot about technical leadership. Rod Vag taught us about Node.js, and many other sessions went on today that were very, very educational. And I think the theme that I noticed today in some of the speakers was the whole idea that a lot of the speakers today were both open source developers, but also were entrepreneurs on their own. And I kind of saw a pattern in their advice, which was encouragement to our audience members to kind of take that leap and explore that side of their personality, and to maybe look into the business or marketing side of what they may not currently have in their repertoire today, so that they can succeed with their project and maybe make a lifestyle out of that. So I just want to add to that and say that I definitely encourage the audience to explore that, to be vulnerable. If there's a project that you're considering working on, give it a shot. You know, there's nothing wrong with trying and failing. You know, we only have our own fear to be worried about here. There's no real permanent negative consequences to failing. And in fact, the earlier you get started, the better, because as you go on later in life, there's more and more liability that you have. There's more and more folks that depend on you financially. And so if there's no time better than today to get started with whatever project you're thinking about embarking on. So I really, really encourage you to consider pursuing that. And hopefully, you know, send me an email in a few years and let me know how it's going. You know, I'd love to maybe feature you in a future Hack Summit based on your results. So thanks again, guys. We're going to be back tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Pacific time. We have an incredible roster of speakers tomorrow. It's going to be amazing. We'll send the full roster out via email for you guys to take a look at. And I hope everyone can join us tomorrow, because it's going to be an amazing, amazing day. So Hampton, thanks again for being here with us today. And if any of you guys found value in today's sessions or in Hampton's talk, then please consider making a donation to the nonprofits using this user interface. And also, please check out the Hack Guides project. There's a button in your UI for that. We'd love any participation contributions that you guys can make in terms of making this a success that developers around the world can learn from each other and have content translate into other languages, and also just to basically spread knowledge throughout the world so that we can all aspire to be better developers. It's all free, all open source. So, you know, I encourage the community to get involved in that. So thanks again, Hampton. Really appreciate your time today.
No problem. I'm going to tweet out the slides, by the way, too. So Catlin on Twitter.
Great. We'll see everyone tomorrow. Have a great night.